So welcome everyone. I hope you're doing well. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Marian and I'm an international marketing specialist at the University of Tartu. I am happy to welcome you to the Alumni Talks 2023 event, and I will be your host today. Alumni Talks is our new series where our fantastic alumni share their story of studying at the University of Tartu and give a short lecture on a topic they chose. Today, I am here with Yalin, who has a master's degree in international relations and regional studies. He graduated in 2021 and is currently a junior research fellow in political science at the University of Tartu. Yalin will talk about the international patron-client relationships in de facto and microstates. Also, just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the webinar, please leave them to the Q&A box. We will address them at the end of the webinar. If you have any technical difficulties, please write us in the chat box and we will try to help you resolve them. And also we are recording today's talk and all participants will receive a recording after the webinar. But now, without further ado, I would like to give a floor to our presenter today. So Yalin, if you are ready, please begin.
Yes, hello. It is a great pleasure to be here today talking about my experiences at the University of Tartu, and because I love the university so much, it was a no-brainer for me to do this panel. And I hope everyone can hear me well. And I will share my slides now. And we can begin. So my name is Yalin. I studied at the University of Tartu, started in 2019. Right now I'm a first-year PhD student. So and international patron-client relationships is a topic that I've also researched for my MA thesis. And this is a continuation, sort of a continuation of it, because my supervisor and we thought that we were onto something good here. So like I said, I'm a first-year PhD student, junior research fellow in the University of Tartu. I'm currently not in Tartu. As part of the winter holidays, I'm back here in my hometown, home country of Turkey. I did my BA in Istanbul University in English language and literature, which I should say that it was a really different experience than what I had as a master's student in the University of Tartu. I should also say that after my BA, I had kind of decided that I wanted nothing to do with academia because of the way things were done there. I had lost all fascination, I should say, with academia. But then I always knew that I wanted to do a master's in international relations. And I actually applied to 2 universities only for my master's. One was in Germany, I will not name it. And the other was the University of Tartu. The one in Germany rejected me because my BA was in English language and literature, and University of Tartu gave me a chance. Also, I can say that this program has also given chances to many other people who did not receive their bachelor's in international relations. For example, there's now another first-year PhD student who was my classmate actually during my MA, and she studied economics and dropped out of it, did a lot of different stuff. But the point is that gave us a chance, even though we didn't come from a political science or international relations background. I wrote here that I observed life in different parts of the world because, well, I've been abroad, I've studied abroad quite a lot. And I'm partly from Turkey, but the other part of me is from Northern Cyprus. It's a de facto state. It's kind of half of the Republic of Cyprus, if anybody is not familiar with it. And that's also why I wanted to mention this, because that's also why I am fascinated with de facto states, and I wanted to do research on de facto states. I've been, since I was a small kid, I'd always been, I always told my mom that I wanted to be a scientist. I never knew that I was going to be a political scientist instead of like one that works in a lab. I also like cooking. I like cooking a lot. I like trying out different recipes. I love eating as well. So it's they kind of intertwine. And also, I also wanted to mention that I'm going to get married this summer, which is a happy and joyous event in my life. So I wanted to give you a bit of a familiarity with myself before I get on to the research and everything related to it. So let me talk about Tartu a little bit, my experiences in Tartu. Everybody always asked me when I applied for Estonia and the University of Tartu for my MA, everybody was like, well, where is Estonia or where is Tartu? And when I told them that it was the second largest city in Estonia with only a population of 100,000 people, everybody is shocked, because I was born in Istanbul, which is now, I think it's like 24 million people or something. But by the time I left Istanbul, I was quite fed up with all the crowds just going everywhere all day long. So Tartu was a bit of a change for the better for me in terms of getting some peace and quiet. It's a small but cozy city. It's the historical old town is just, you can see pictures of it. It's just the way it is back when it was first started. You know, it's everything is still the same, and I think that's kind of nice when you come from a larger city. Also, when I lived in Istanbul, there were some mornings when I was doing my BA during the rush hours, I had class. So I had to take the public transport during the rush hours for like an hour and a half. And there were days when I woke up and I just didn't go to class because I didn't want to get on the public transport. But compared to that, Tartu is just great in that sense. If you're staying at the student dorms, it's just like for Johan Institute of Political Studies, it's only an 8-minute walk. But Estonia is one of the flattest countries in the world. But then I always thought it was ironic how our institute is on top of a hill where everything else is like, you know, kind of flat and you can just walk straight. Yes, there are long winters. The darkness, the cold is not a problem for me. The darkness a little bit more, but then if you're a student here, pretty much everybody else that you meet that is a young person or that looks, I don't know, foreign to the country is also a student. So there's this sort of, I'm not gonna say kinship or something, but it's a nice environment to be in with all these students from all over the world. And also you will have a lot of work, not too much work, I should say, but a lot of work to keep you busy. There are cool events like the night library where when you go to the university's library and they bring dogs and you can pet them. So it's pretty nice. Lunch is very nice in Tartu. I thought that I should mention it. It's cheaper than having dinner. Every restaurant has like a daily lunch option that you get for around €5-7, and it's tasty, it's nice. So you can get a warm meal every day for cheap. The entire city is a campus. You will see the university's buildings all over the city. And also you can, if you're a student, that kind of helps. Well, there's Wi-Fi everywhere, but you can also get the university's Wi-Fi pretty much everywhere you go, because the buildings of the university are just all around the town. And I personally think that it's a great environment for students from all levels, because the University of Tartu, from my experience at Johan Institute of Political Studies, has been very supportive of its students, not just as researchers, but also as human beings. You can go to a lecture that you feel close to, and you can kind of open up and tell them how you feel about a certain thing. And then they will be understanding. Or, for example, half of my master's studies coincided with the pandemic. And I had to stay home. I was alone. I kind of had this pretty bad eczema on my hands. And I had to go to the emergency. They wrapped both of my hands up. Meanwhile, I have to do schoolwork. And I emailed my lecturers because I had deadlines, and, I just told them I can't do it right now. So they gave me extra time. So I'm telling you this because I think they're just very understanding in that sense. Yes, Estonia is small, Tartu is even smaller, but UT is one of the top 250 universities in the world right now, which, in my opinion, is a great achievement for a country of only 1.3 million people. Turkey has 84 million people, where we don't have even one in the top 500. So that tells you something. And that is made possible by cutting edge research, obviously. Recently, a satellite made by University of Tartu students was launched in space. So how many universities can say that their students built a satellite and now it's in space somewhere? So yeah, that's my experience in Tartu has not only been positive, but also, I would say, life-changing, because I went from a guy who kind of hated academia to a guy now who's studying to become a PhD in political sciences. And that's all about the approach that I saw, all about the respect that I saw from my lecturers and all the staff, even from like the dean, and everyone is just really supportive, really helpful. So yeah, if you come to the University of Tartu, I'm not saying this because this is a marketing organization, but I really say this from the heart that if you want to be a great researcher, then this is the place for you to be. So enough with that, enough of my own and my experiences. Let's move on now to what the research is about. So patron-client relationships, what is it? What do they mean? Patron-client relationships is actually a theory that was developed in the discipline of anthropology, and it looked at how for example, tribal people, there are these patrons who have more resources, I don't know, more opportunities to feed people, to give them loans, to give them places to work, give them shelter. And they looked at the relationship between the patrons and their clients, which get the services. So, but the important aspect of this relationship is that this is not just a complete dependency on a stronger party. The patron has something to gain from this relationship, like both sides gain something from this relationship. So we can't just say that the patron is stronger, so they're giving money and they're giving resources, So they're just the client just has to do everything that the patron tells them to do. In the case of de facto and microstates, especially in de facto states, because as some of you might know, and for those of you who might not know, de facto states mean that these entities are unrecognized by the rest of the international community. For example, Northern Cyprus, my mother is from Northern Cyprus. I have a citizenship from Northern Cyprus, but the only country that recognizes Northern Cyprus is Turkey. And what does this mean? Then this means that Northern Cyprus cannot enter into international affairs with the other states, as, for example, Estonia can go and open an embassy in Lithuania, but Northern Cyprus cannot. And this sort of pushes them out of the benefits of the international system. Their voices are not heard. They can't trade. They can't establish diplomatic relationships. So in this sense, the patron of Northern Cyprus is Turkey. So, but then if you cannot trade with anybody else, and you're like, your country is pretty small, so you don't have that many resources to trade for anyway, and you get a lot of benefits from your patron, but then everybody expects you to become a puppet state, just having a different name, but performing the will of the patron state. In this research, I try to prove otherwise. My MA thesis was also on this patron-client relationships, and that had the case of Northern Cyprus, and we looked at how Northern Cyprus dealt with the demands of the patron. So I just gave this brief intro to patron-client relationships, just so you understand what we're dealing with here. I hope I was clear enough. So how can we tell what is a patron-client relationship? There are 4 factors in the recent literature of IR. In anthropology, there's a lot of different voices, there's a lot of different opinions, but for IR, it's pretty straightforward because it's just been sort of, this literature has been gaining foot in international relations just recently. So I would kind of say that there's more or less an agreement on what is a patron-client relationship. So how do we tell? First, there has to be asymmetry, which means the patron compared to the client is a lot stronger, in a sense that has more military power, more economic resources, is at a better geopolitical location in order to connect with the world. So there has to be an asymmetry between the patron and the client. The second factor is reciprocity, which means that both sides gain from the relationship. For example, the patron might give money. In the case of Turkey and North Cyprus, Turkey gives a lot of money to North Cyprus just so that it can exist. But it also enjoys a strategic presence in the Mediterranean. So they also have something to gain from this, which means that they cannot break this relationship so easily, because that presence for them is really important. The next one is, and I should mention that asymmetry and reciprocity, these are things that we can measure through physical measurements. So we can look at the number of troops Turkey has, military troops, the number of troops North Cyprus has. We can look at North Cyprus using Turkish liras, for example, and then we can tell asymmetry and reciprocity from these very hard facts, very material facts. But there's also effectivity. Effectivity means that there are ties of identity, kinship, family ties, friendship ties between the patron and the client. So what this basically means is that when you're getting so much support for just to ensure your existence, this might make you feel like you're not a full-fledged state. But then with the case with de facto states is that they have gone through a lot of hardships just to have their own state. So it sort of undermines their understanding of themselves, or it's already given that the world doesn't see them how they want to be seen anyway. So effectivity ensures that, look, Turkey supports me, but they are my friend, they are my brother. We come from the same background, we come from the same culture, so it's okay. It's sort of like you, as a teenager, you probably wouldn't take money from someone else, from a total stranger, comfortably as you would take money from your family, just to, you know, I don't know, have a place to stay, have food to eat. So it's sort of similar to that in that sense. They have to feel this sort of, at least friendship. The lowest of these relationships, I mean, the starting point, the bare minimum is they have to feel that they're friends. And then if there are cultural ties and identity ties, it moves from there. And the last factor in patron-client relationships is that there has to be compliance. If the patron refuses to comply to support the client, then there's no relationship, because the client won't gain anything from it. The patron doesn't support them, there's no relationship. But this doesn't mean that there has to be always full compliance. We can measure compliance on a continuum from compliant to non-compliant. And there are moments in these relationships where non-compliance actually occurs, even in the face of losing all the money, all the benefits, all the military support. There are times when these client states risk their physical security, economic security, because they just don't want to comply. And we will get to that. We will get to why then they don't want to comply in a moment. So, like I said, asymmetry and reciprocity can be measured using hard physical facts. But how do we measure effectivity? On its own, patron-client relationships is not enough to measure effectivity. And that's where ontological security comes in. So this ontological security theory is, some people don't like it. I absolutely love it because I think personally that just physical security, ensuring physical security is not enough for why people might do, or a state might do something in a certain way. This sentence might be confusing, but I will explain it more. So ontological security is actually, it was at first a theory from psychology, from the discipline of psychology. Then it was moved on to sociology. And then in 2006, Jennifer Mitzen's article incorporated it into IR. And it has, for my framework, it has two factors. One is the security of identity. You can say that ontological security is the security of identity, because ontological security theory claims that our identities are reinforced by the continuation of our relationships. So let me give an example. I right now am a PhD researcher at the University of Tartu. I go one morning to the office. I go up to the 4th floor. I climb all the way up there using the stairs. It's really cold outside. I'm out of breath. And everybody who sees me, they're, you know, saying, hi, hello, how are you doing? It's obvious that I work here, they know me. But the next day I go and people are like, who are you? Why are you here? And even though I'm really sure that I work at the university, if they continuously tell me that I don't work there, I don't belong there, I have no business being there, that puts my security of identity under threat. Because if everybody tells me that I'm not this person that works here, after a while, either I will try to do something that proves it, because this gives me anxiety, or I just start not showing up, believing them that I don't work here. Maybe it was just a practical joke. So we can say that overall, this is true for states as well. If other states in the international system did not respect the power of the United States, then we probably wouldn't be able to tell that United States is a powerful state in the international system. So the second factor in this framework is self-realization. So let's say that I establish that I am a PhD student in the University of Tartu. Then what are my goals? My goals are to complete the PhD, to, you know, do research, to complete my PhD thesis. But then if I fail, then I will, of course, I will not be able to say I am a PhD student or I am a PhD now if I can't defend my thesis. And this is also true for states suffering from ontological insecurity. If a state cannot reach its goals that it sets for itself, this is important because you set goals for yourself and you reach them and you say, yes, I did it, this is me. But then for especially de facto states, this is harder because not only everyone tells you that you are not a state, even though you carry all the qualities, and even some de facto states have better democratization levels than I don't know, a lot of recognized states. They will still tell you that you are not a state. We don't recognize that you are a state because of political reasons. And then on top of that, you are failing to realize your goals. Then how are you going to be able to tell yourself that you are a state, even though you are very sure of it, you've bled for it, I don't know, your grandfather died in the war for it, and you still see it everywhere in your city, in your country, all around you. So if these are not met, then ontological insecurity occurs. Ontological insecurity is basically fearing or perceiving that you are not able to fulfill your identity and being anxious from it. And anxiety can lead to a lot of different behavior. For example, let's say, Abkhazia is another post-Soviet de facto state. And when they claimed their independence, practically nobody recognized them. But Russia did. And for Russia, that was a strategic move. But what essentially happened was then by not recognizing Abkhazia, the international community pushed this state further into Russia's arms. And then on top of that, the international community kind of gets mad when Abkhazia supports Russia, right? Because they have no other choice. They want to exist in a peaceful home in their own country, but then they're not allowed to do that. So they hold on to a friend, and then to overcome this anxiety, and they basically have no choice but to do it. So non-compliance, when we go back to the final factor of patron-client relationships, I argue in this research that non-compliance with patron demands in the patron-client relationship is imminent when ontological insecurity is present. Physical insecurity, economic insecurity, you can kind of deal with that by negotiating with the patron, or looking for other ways to ensure your existence in this sense. But when ontological insecurity occurs, non-compliance is much more likely to occur because the patron demands are threatening something very dear to the hearts of the people and also to the individuals who run the country. The mainstream sort of argument has been that, you know, states are different than individuals, states do not act like individuals, but I argue that states in the end are run by individuals with their own belief systems, their own ontological insecurities, their own perceptions of the world. And that's why we came up with this tool, let's say, to observe how client states, in the case of this research, de facto and microstates, navigate the demands of the patron. These are done by the political elite, the hence elite navigations, and they usually happen when either the ontological security of the political elite are threatened, or at the same time, the public also has some sort of perceived ontological insecurity. We can see that through demonstrations against a certain decision that the political elite make in the face of patron demands. We can see it in the actions of the political elite, where they believe that a certain demand of the patron is definitely against the identity of the state, of the people. So they decide that they will navigate the situation by defying patron demands, demanding patronage, dictating patronage, or conforming to patronage. So defiance is pretty simple. You just say, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I will go to the constitutional court of my state. If you recognize me as a state, then you recognize the decision of my constitutional court, and I will not do what you're asking me to do, because this is just completely against what I and my people believe in. Demanding patronage can happen when there's some sort of internal dispute in the state. You can go to the patron and say, hey, this other political elite guy, this other leader of the party, who maybe happens to run the country as well, you can say, well, this guy doesn't listen to reason, so you come and talk to him. Or they can also dictate patronage and say, we want things done in a certain way to ensure our whatever, our ontological security, our physical security, our economic security. And the last one is conforming. This is the latest addition that I will make to this research in the PhD thesis. In the MA thesis and the article that we published out of my MA thesis, we did not have the conformation. But conforming, we got to realize that conforming to something and obeying something are totally two different things. When you are conforming, you are receiving something in return. You are receiving wealth, you are receiving comfort, you're receiving something. But when you obey, there's usually really nothing to gain from it. You just obey because the other is stronger. So in a nutshell, patron-client relationships incorporate different factors of a relationship, the historical background, the military power, economic power, geographical location, what they gain from each other, and their identity ties together. And then ontological security comes in to explain why certain decisions are made at moments of tension between the patron and the client. For this research, I have six cases so far. For de facto states, we have Abkhazia, South Ossetia, Transnistria, and Russia is their patron. These are all states with less than 5 recognitions. So this really puts a lot of constraints on how they can act in the international system, in their own state, in their relationship with the patron. And they have clear-cut relations with Russia as the patron state. So they are representative cases in this sense. That's why they are picked because this is a newly developing concept and a tool. We have to have these cases that are really straightforward in their relationship with the patron to have a clear and concise thesis. For microstates, we have Marshall Islands, Federated States of Micronesia, and Palau. Microstates were picked based on their population being below 100,000 people. These are very, very small states. As you can see on the map, Federated States of Micronesia is just a bunch of islands that decided that they're going to be a state. They have different identity concerns among each other. Palau is very small, as you can see, and Marshall Islands is heavily, even more so, connected to the US than the rest of the region. So in this case, the United States is the patron. They have what is called a compact of free association between themselves and the United States, which ensures their economic guarantees. Also, United States has military bases on these islands to better control the Pacific. So as you can see, they both gain something from this relationship. And on this map, you can also see where Transnistria is. If you've never heard of it, if you've never seen it, it's in Moldova. It's this very, very tiny, small state, which sort of is still enamored with the Soviet Union. Abkhazia, as you can see, is at a very important place, has 240 kilometers of shores on the Black Sea, which is a great asset to Russia, but also it is a problem when it comes to Georgia and its EU accession. So that's why Abkhazia is important here. And South Ossetia is just a mountainous region, but nevertheless, they exist and they have their own preferences and systems. So they deserve a look. What is the data for this? How do I get the data? What I did for my MA thesis was I collected newspaper articles and scholarly articles to sort of process trace the events, 1 or 2 events of high tension between the patron and the client. I mapped out the event, and then I used interviews with expert and political elite who were preferably involved in those events to sort of cross-examine the data that I collected to see if my perceptions of identity and ontological insecurity here were correct, actually. For my MA thesis, that worked out pretty well. Let's see if it works out for the PhD thesis as well. As a PhD student, you will get the question of, so what? Like, why should I care about these little small states that are out there who are not even recognized, some of them? Well, these states have been labeled puppet states, or in the case of de facto states, or ineffective ones in terms of microstates. And that I have done many journeys to North Cyprus, and I have seen how the people suffer because of the non-recognition, or because of how the international system perceives them. And to me, that is just wrong, because when you go there and you walk through the streets, you just see that, you know, this is a state. They have all the state instruments. They have, you know, roads. They have like a Ministry of Interior. They have their own flag. They have their own way of living. So why should they be labeled puppet states? And like I mentioned earlier, these assumptions push them further into their patron's arms. And in conflict management situations, this sometimes makes managing and resolving the conflict extremely hard. I personally believe that if North Cyprus was recognized today by the international system, they wouldn't have to be so close with Turkey as to sort of becoming an agent for Turkey's will in the Mediterranean. And this is a problem. We cannot resolve conflicts without understanding how the other thinks and why they react to a certain issue. And from an academic perspective, ontological security of Palau, Marshall Islands, Federated States of Micronesia, these are not mapped. The patron-client relationships are not mapped. For Abkhazia, for de facto states, there's more work. But for microstates, there's even less. So it is a growing field. There's a lot of exploring to do. And that's why I kind of also like to research this, because, for example, for elite navigations, the only article that we have today is the article that I published with my supervisor. And that kind of makes things harder because there's not that much to fall back to. But then at the same time, you are doing something brand new. And that's what makes it interesting for me. And also patron-client relationships, literature and ontological security literatures are growing. So by conducting this research, I can contribute to multiple strands of research with one PhD thesis. And that really, I would really like to do that. So basically what I expect to find is that there's a discussion of the agency of these states. If they're puppet states, can they really be effective in the region, in the world? Well, from my point of view, the mainstream theories of IR, like realism, like liberalism, they have ignored these outlier states so that we can have a grand theory of realism or liberalism. But they nevertheless do exist. We cannot say that we are scholars of international relations without paying attention to actual international relations. I expect to find that these states do have agency. We just were not aware of it. We ignored it for reasons, many reasons, or lacked the tools to detect it. And that's what elite navigations present. It's a tool to detect agency of how these states can exert their agency in unconventional ways. And yeah, like I said, they're effective in regional and world politics. For example, if there's an issue between Turkey and Greece today, the matter inevitably comes down to the Cyprus issue. And that leads to a lot of problems being left unsolved. And they do have the tools in their arsenal to deal with the patron demands. It's not that they don't. Ontological security is important for each and every one of us, even if we don't realize it. This is not something that we think about on a daily basis, but it is important. And I expect to find that these are really not puppet or ineffective states. They have their own preferences, their own goals, but they are not able to reach them as comfortably as, let's say, United States. And I mean, obviously, United States does not reach its goals that comfortably anyway. So why should they? So that is all from me for now. I hope that I wasn't speaking in a too complicated way. I hope that everything was clear and understandable, and I hope to see you at the University of Tartu. My email, you can reach it through the staff page of Johan if you need to reach me to ask questions or something. So that is all from me.
Okay, thank you so much, Yalin, for this exciting talk. So now it is time for some questions from our audience. And just a reminder, please type your questions to the Q&A box. So the first one says, thank you for your talk. Why did you decide to change your field of study from bachelor's to master's?
Well, that's a that's a long story because the system in Turkey is a bit different. You have to take this giant massive exam during high school after 4 years of high school, and I didn't really feel like studying for it. And I did great in English all throughout my life, and I just took the English exam just for fun, and I realized that I was in the top 2,000 of the English exam takers in that year, and I could go to Istanbul University, which is a good school, considered to be a good school. But I always, when I went there, I saw that I tried different jobs. I tried to be like I tried to work at a museum because I had to speak English. I tried to become a private tutor. I taught high-ranking managers in big companies, like a one-on-one classes. And I realized that it's really not for me. I was always more interested in politics, more interested in why certain political events take shape in the way that they do. So that's why I kind of wanted to switch from that. I honestly believe that there was no job for me as a BA student or a BA graduate of English language and literature.
Okay, thank you. So the next one is, what are the things that you didn't expect about the University of Tartu?
Well, I didn't really expect it to be as good as it was because honestly, before I applied for my MA, I hadn't even heard of the University of Tartu. But then when I came to Tartu, I started studying there. I realized that, these people actually care about your opinion as a student, where I didn't get that during my BA. So I really had no expectations. I was just happy that I was accepted, that I was going to do this. I was happy that I had another path to follow other than just being a translator or something. So yeah, I didn't expect my overall experience to be this good so that I would decide to, stay in academia and pursue a PhD. So I guess everything was unexpected.
That is a great answer. So, is there something you wish you had known before studying your program?
I wish I had known that no matter how, inexperienced you might feel because you're coming from a different background, you shouldn't feel like you are at a disadvantage, because if you are picked to join that year's 2024's MA International Relations and Regional Studies, you are as qualified as the other people. There's no doubt about that. I always thought that my questions would sound pretty stupid because, I don't really know about anything. I had studied the basics on my own before I applied, but I didn't really know my capabilities. So it's just a matter of being courageous and believing in yourself. I would say in a cheesy way that you are actually there because you are qualified to be there. So I wish I'd known that so that I didn't feel all the anxiety of being from English language and literature.
Okay, great. So have you acquired any new language skills in your time at the University of Tartu?
I tried. I was taking Russian in 2019. It was going pretty well, but then we got hit with the pandemic. And when you're learning a language, it's not really that easy to do it online. So I kind of quit. But the university offers a lot of language courses. They even offer, if I'm not mistaken, Arabic, or like I think there's also Chinese and Russian and Estonian and German. So there's a lot of courses offered. I also got familiar with Estonian a little bit as well. Now when I go to the shops, I can tell what is what. I can't really speak it that well, but I'm planning on taking some courses anyway. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. So are you currently teaching at the University of Tartu? If yes, then what courses?
Right now I'm not, because I'm a first year PhD student. And there haven't been like, openings, because people already have their teaching assistants and things are already set up. So, but it is required of us to have a teaching experience throughout our PhD studies. So at some point I will teach a course and I'm excited about it, but right now I'm not teaching any courses.
Okay, thank you. So how would you describe the workload for international relations at Tartu? Is it relatively spread out or does it build up quite quickly?
Well, yeah, I mean, it also depends on how much you take on, because you can take a lot of courses if you wish to do so. You can take 9 courses, or you can take, I think the minimum that you should take is like 5 if they're all 6 credit courses. So obviously there's going to be a little bit of a build-up come, for example, the end of semester, Christmas time, before Christmas, everybody wants to get done, and then after Christmas, if you're not done by Christmas, then that's when you need to do them. But for me, I didn't really feel like the workload was extreme, but I also didn't feel like it was easy, or there was not a lot to do. There was a lot to do, but I found that there's a balance. I mean, when I was a student there, I would go out and have a beer with my friends, I don't know, maybe 2-3 evenings, and then do all my work on the weekends and go to the library or something. So you can get through it. It's not compared to the US, for example, or like compared to the UK, when you go to these big schools and they give you, I don't know, 10 readings each class per week. It's really not that. So you can be comfortable about that.
Okay, so I think we have time for one more question. So are you planning to stay in Estonia after defending your PhD? And would you like to continue working in the academia?
Well, it all depends on the opportunities that you get, right? But for me personally, now that my personal life is taking a different turn that I didn't expect before, I'm probably not going to be staying in Estonia after my PhD. And what was the second part of, would I like to continue working in academia?
Yes.
If I can, yes, because I enjoy it. I like to research. I like to be like doing research on the topic that I'm interested in. I've always, like I said earlier, I've always wanted to be a scientist. So it's good. I like it. So I would like to continue in academia. I just don't know if it's going to be in Estonia.
Okay. So maybe we still have time for one more quick question. So what kind of extracurricular activities are available at your faculty? What you know of?
Well, because we are considered as university staff members, the extracurricular activities for us is a bit different than I would say for the students. But well, I think before Christmas, there was a Christmas celebration that was open to everyone. And also we had, I remember during my MA, we had a weekend in Kariku, which is like a hotel with a sports complex, and we went there and stayed for one night, I think, or 2 nights. I don't remember that much, but then we got to participate in lectures. There were guest lecturers. Other than that, the Erasmus Student Network really organizes a lot of parties, a lot of game nights, events for meeting other people. There was a Turkish night in 2019, and this year there was like a Bollywood night for Indian culture. So there's a lot going on, actually. If you follow, there's a lot of stuff to do.
Okay, great. I believe we covered almost all of the questions from our audience. I would like to thank our presenter, Yalin, for sharing his experience and for a great talk on an interesting topic. I wish you well on your PhD studies. And thanks to our audience for being with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. And like I said, if you need to contact me, if you have more questions, my email is on the staff page of Johan Skytte Institute. So feel free to contact me. And hope to see you at the University of Tartu.
Okay, thank you. And a few things before we wrap up. If you're a future student and planning to apply to this program this year, the application period has already started and the deadline is on 15 March. And there is also going to be a virtual meeting with the program director where you can ask any questions you have regarding the program. We will send you the information along with the recording of today's talk. And thank you again to everybody, and especially for Yalin for joining us today. And have a nice evening.